The local currency has lost most of its recent gains and remains above the 18 rand to the dollar mark. This comes as a grey listing announcement continues to weigh on sentiment. In company news, Truworths surprises on the upside, while Deloitte and Tongaat part with a settlement in the millions. Matete Thulare is head of foreign exchange execution at Rand Merchant Bank, joining us now to unpack some of these market moves. Mr. Thulare, an unusual day today. We have you right at the top of our bulletin. Let's start with the rand, trading above the 18 rand to the dollar mark all week. Talk us through the driving components there and the outlook for the rest of February.
Good morning, Claudia. I suppose obviously, yes, it has been a really topsy-turvy week, and I think as we stand, the rand is the second worst performing emerging market currency, having lost about 6.3% year to date already. I mean, you would assume that the strong tailwinds with China reopening and obviously that helping commodity-linked currencies such as the Chilean peso as well as the Mexican peso would help the rand. But however, the rand continues to underperform due to local factors. I mean, we do know that, now there's, stage 7 talks and obviously the faltering freight rail volumes out at Transnet. That is dampening any positive impetus that is coming from China's reopen. Now, other factors that have been suggested, as you allude to, is the potential grey listing around the inadequate money laundering and anti-terrorist financing controls. Now, that decision will be made later this afternoon. But as we know, I mean, there's already a wide range of views when it comes to the rand. There's some doomsday predictions saying that the rand could go all the way to 19, and there's some that are saying that we could go all the way to 15. But there is one broad agreement that the behavior of the currencies this year will be dependent on the Federal Reserve and by extension also the performance of the dollar. So that's going to be the main driver of the rand this year, besides the local factors and over and above obviously what we have this afternoon or later this evening with the announcement from the grey listing agency.
Well, let's get straight into that. That Financial Action Task Force, that announcement, whether or not South Africa is going to be placed on this grey list. I suppose the question now is whether South Africa has any chance of avoiding this grey listing, or is it a matter of how long are we actually going to stay there for, if indeed we are placed on it?
So look, I mean, our baseline view is that we will be grey listed, although there is a small risk that we can get a reprieve for another year. Look, government has made efforts to pass the required legislation. The lack of implementation is what is going to weigh. The outcome will be published, as I said, later this afternoon to early evening. That is what the Financial Action Task Force alluded to us. It is going to be late this afternoon towards the early evening. But I think also what is also going to be impacting us is the fact that it is widely expected and it is already priced into the market. But don't make a mistake that the rand could weaken on the back of these news. I mean, the report already has outlined 12 priority actions that the country needs to take into account into the new framework in line with the other 40 recommendations that they did give to us to improve the effectiveness of the implementation of anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism. So already considering the progress made so far and the unavoidable time lag in implementing the new regulations, I think it is going to be quite difficult that the FATF will be convinced that South Africa has qualifiers for passing the mark in sufficient number of categories to avoid the need for enhanced monitoring. And that's why they're going to say, look, we have to be grey listed. And that is the decision that we're really expecting from them later this evening.
As we head towards the end of this interview, let's talk company news. And as we mentioned right at the top, in its half-year results to January, Truworths reporting a revenue increase of over 18%. Talk us through their performance.
I mean, if anything, the numbers from Truworths really, it is evident that the consumer is under immense pressure, as it has seen an increase in demand for credit. Already they reported a 13% increase in retail sales to about 11 billion, with those numbers obviously showing that there has been an increase of around 16% of people looking to buy on credit. Now, the cost pressures led largely by the energy crisis that we keep talking about has been on the rise. Truworths has had to pass on some of these pressures onto the consumer. And the other thing that, that is very interesting about what they've reported also is the fact that they're adopting a proactive approach to the country's power crisis, and they're now planning to actually ensure and insulate the rest of their stores by extending power backup solutions to the stores that are still feeling the effects of the load shedding. So already it said it is ahead of its peers by insulating already 80% of the turnover from the impacts of load shedding by installing alternative energy solutions. So it just goes to show you that, the retailers and also the load shedding crisis are starting to go hand in hand. And it means obviously it's going to put quite a lot of cost pressure on them, which they will have to unfortunately pass on to the consumer.
Very briefly on this one, Tongaat and Deloitte, they have come to a 260 million rand settlement. The questions being asked, perhaps at least some questions, is this another golden handshake with no repercussions?
Look, I mean, Deloitte has come out to say that they are going to be giving them 260 million. I think we all know the fact that there is a business rescue practitioner course that is going there at Tongaat. I mean, we do know that it has been one of those financial scandals that has been in the market. So Deloitte has said that, look, they're agreeing to pay the settlement for claims based on 6 years of audited financial reports without an admission of liability. So already, I mean, if you just look at the numbers over the 11 years that Deloitte had been giving services to Tongaat, that had already charged them something like 300 million rand in fees over that 11 years. During that time, there were major misstatements in the company's annual financial statements, which obviously led to the collapse of the company's share price. And already the business rescue practitioners there are asking for creditors to allow for a third extension of the business rescue plan. And I think this is why you're seeing this 260 million coming to the fore. But also the beauty about it is that the company continues to operate with the completion of the off-crop maintenance program. Also, I think the company is also on track to commence for the 2023-2024 sugar season. And obviously, the large business rescue plans are still in place, but at least the company is still continuing and operating. So I think, look, it's not all doom and gloom, but it looks like they are rebuilding and rephasing the whole company into restructuring it as to what the business rescue practitioners are saying.
Matete Thulare, Head of Foreign Exchange Execution at Rand Merchant Bank. Thank you very much for that markets update.